Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Ahmed Dents, Director of Venue Experience and Artistic Associate here at San Diego Repertory Theatre. I hope y'all can hear me. If you can't, somebody just let me know that you can. I think you can. Again, my name is Ahmed Dents, Director of Venue Experience and Artistic Associate here at San Diego Repertory Theatre. Welcome to a special edition of We Are Listening. You know how we get down. We celebrate the lives and experiences of Black theater creatives, professionals, administrative workers. That's how we get down here and We Are Listening. And I want to thank you very much for joining me this evening. Now, you know, I usually don't do this by myself. My co-pilot, Jacole Kitchen, Director of Arts Engagement and In-House Casting at La Jolla Playhouse, is usually in the driver's seat with me. I want to give a big shout out to Freedom Bradley Ballantyne at the Old Globe, Associate Artistic Director and Director of Arts Engagement. There we are for lack of a better term, the three-headed monster that kind of makes up the curation team of We Are Listening. Also want to get a shout out to AJ, who is usually in the production seat with me. She is just doing a lot of work right now, so I didn't want to bring her on and do this thing, but she'll be back with us in the chair as we bring back guests to you. We have moved the format to be once a month now that live theater is back in session. Number one, to make sure that we don't interrupt with you and your theater going. We would not want to clash with you and going out and getting around town to see all the spectacular theater that's going on. Also, Monday is just a better day for us. There's nothing, usually all the theaters are dark. We won't run into any conflicts with artists and creators for the most part. So we just think Monday nights is a better night, again, once a month, just to kind of help everybody, get on with what they're doing and keep going with all the things that they're working on. But as we are bringing guests once a month, I still wanted to add kind of a component to keep us in the flow, keep us knowing each other, keeping us getting together. So we came up with We Are Listening Notes, where we will just focus on different topics and different creatives throughout the history of theater in America who identify or self-identified as Black. So again, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Before we get started, if you will indulge me, a couple of announcements. We are going to be talking about Lorraine Hansberry, but I'll get back to you about the details on that. First and foremost, I want to read our land acknowledgement. San Diego Rep would like to acknowledge that the Lyceum Theater is built on the traditional lands of the Ipai Tipai Kumeyaay Nation, translated as the people who overlook the ocean from the cliffs. We also want to recognize their neighbors in the region, the Piowachium, the Kauia, and the Capino peoples. San Diego Rep honors the over 20,000 tribal members living in our area and elevates local elders, past, present, and future. We respectfully acknowledge these community members and their tremendous contributions to our region and thank them for their continued stewardship. If you want to read our full land acknowledgement, please head on over to sdrep.org/acknowledgement. Also wanted to talk to you about a couple of things going on around town. As you know, San Diego Repertory Theatre, as you see it scrolling across the bottom of your screen, We Are Listening is produced by San Diego Repertory Theatre in partnership with the La Jolla Playhouse and the Old Globe. Very quickly, just want to share with you a couple of things that are happening at our theaters. Over at the Playhouse, as you can see here on the screen, the Yellow House. That's right. You want to check out the Yellow House starting on the 16th. The Yellow House by Kimberly, directed by Neil Keller. That is at the La Jolla Playhouse at the Mandel Weiss Theater. Also want to take you on over to the Old Globe and check out all the things that are going on over there. Check out the Globe for All, Shakespeare Call and Response. You definitely want to get over there and check that out. Also, one more thing for you to check out at the Old Globe, seeing as how we are coming up on Christmas time. You know they had to do it right. Dr. Seuss' How the Grinch Stole Christmas, books and lyrics by Timothy Mason, music by Mel Marvin, November 10th through the 31st. Head on over to the oldglobe.org. Get your tickets for that. And back over this way at San Diego Repertory Theatre, She the People begins on November 8th. She the People is coming to our Lyceum stage. It is created by the world famous comedy mecca, the Second City. So make sure you get your tickets to check out She the People. Again, visit sdrep.org, lajollaplayhouse.org, and the oldglobe.org to get your tickets to these spectacular, spectacular shows. Again, thank you. My name is Ahmed Dents. Thank you for joining us here on We Are Listening. Also want to tell you really quickly before we get into it about a great event that we have coming up here at the end of the week as we begin to start our episode tonight. Again, tonight we are focusing. So let's focus. She is a reason for a question that I'm about to ask in just a couple of minutes. And I do not know why that is blinking like that. Forgive me. Here we go. Is that better? This is tonight's episode. We Are Listening. We are going to be focusing on Lorraine Hansberry, but I also wanted you to understand about a great event that we have coming up here virtually here at San Diego Rep coming up this weekend. It is the Hear Us Now New Play Festival, and I'm going to play this video real quick and let it speak for itself. That's right. The Hear Us Now Festival beginning November 12th, this Friday. Please head on over to sdrep.org to get your tickets. We really want you to join us, and we want you to take a look at these spectacular works, these spectacular plays, spectacular directors, along with the artists that are performing in these readings. So please make sure you join us again, sdrep.org. So let's get into it. What are we talking about tonight? Well, tonight we are talking about the one and only Lorraine Hansberry. But there's a caveat to why we're talking about Lorraine Hansberry tonight. There is a question that has been asked, and the question is, if I can pull it up here, is, I look like I'm going back. Sorry, you don't have to deal with my presentation as I have it out of order, and I think I erased the question, so I will just ask the question. And my question is, or the question that I've heard asked recently is, should or can a theater or performing arts venue, theater, organization also be a social justice organization? Now, it seems like it's an obvious question, but right, this is show business. It is a business, right? And not always is it in everybody's best interest to try to have a social message or deal with a social message or anything like that. Well, I wanted to use Lorraine Hansberry as an example as to why I believe that theaters and performing arts venues should be or can be social justice organizations as well. just as we're talking about Lorraine Hansberry, in case any of you do not know who Lorraine Hansberry is, she was the first African-American woman to have a show produced on Broadway, the first Black playwright, and the youngest American to receive in 1959 the prestigious New York Drama Critics Circle Award for the Best American Play, and the first African-American to win the Distinguished Drama Desk Award. And I found that information on the Nation Women's Hall of Fame website. Now, everybody's entry point to Lorraine Hansberry may not be literature or may not be plays. And I'll give you a reason for that. Of course, I understand what Raising the Sun is. I knew what Raising the Sun is and was, read it as a child, saw the movie as a child. But as I got older, my entry point for understanding Lorraine Hansberry was in the civil rights movement, understanding the role that she played along with James Baldwin and Medgar Evers and Malcolm X and all these other great luminaries that were part of the civil rights movement. That was my entry point for Lorraine Hansberry. So again, the question that I'm asking today, or the question that has been asked we want to visit, is should a theater, or can a theater or performing arts organization also be a social justice organization? My thing is that I feel we're telling narratives, right? We're telling stories. And I think, we probably, as we all can think back, the first stories had to probably begin around the campfire in the village. They had to be relaying stories, thoughts, lessons that we're supposed to teach the tribe, right? We're supposed to go out. So I think this is the ultimate, I think that's the ultimate example of art imitating life. And so again, here's the should a theater or performing arts company be a social justice organization as well, or can it be? So we're going to look at one thing that actually led us to having one of the greatest pieces of art, literature, reading, whatever you want to call it, in American history. We're going to look at what the catalyst was that brought us to have Raising in the Sun in a dynamic American such as Lorraine Hansberry. And we'll start with that here. We'll start with race rental covenants. Now, some of you may not know what rental covenants are or what they were, or I will say what they are. So basically, race rental covenants, these were just what they say they are. They were covenants that were set up by people in neighborhoods to where into the leases and into the structure of the leases in the neighborhoods, houses were not permitted to be sold. Houses were not permitted to be sold to anybody who was not white. I'll repeat that again. Houses were not to be sold to anybody who was not white. If you were not a upstanding white American, an upstanding citizen of the United States and of who identified as white and looked like you did not have a drop of anything else in your blood, you were not to be sold a house. And I want to give you guys just a little bit, and I want you to stick with me because this is very important as to why I feel that organizations such as San Diego Repertory Theater and other regional theaters should at least try at some point to be looking out for those constituents of the cities, neighborhoods, parishes, whatever it is that they are in. This is a website. This is from the University of Minnesota, Mapping Prejudice. I just want to read this to you. During the 20th century, racially restrictive deeds were a ubiquitous part of real estate transactions. Covenants were embedded in property deeds all over the country to keep people who were not white from buying or even occupying land. And I want to go down here to this is an actual newspaper clipping and this is an actual wording from a true to life race rental covenant. And I am going to want to maximize this, and I'll read this for you. As you can see, this is a map. This is Lake Isles. This is I just want to read what this says to you. A fellow cannot interest the dollar without using dollar instincts, and this lot purposely slashed in price to the exact dollar, to attract the dollar. The map shows you where it is and what it looks like. The lot has a curb, gutters, stone walk city, all this. This is just describing what the place looks like in the house. Stands, looks right? Nothing, no big deal. The thing is down here in the fourth paragraph. The party of the second part hereby agrees that the premises hereby conveyed shall not at any time be conveyed, mortgaged, leased to any person or persons of Chinese, Japanese, Moorish, Turkish, Negro, Mongolian, Semitic, or African blood or descent. Said restrictions and covenants shall run with the land, and any breach of any either thereof shall work a forfeiture of title, which may be forced for reentry. So just want to give you a little background for those of you who may not have ever heard of a racial covenant, might not have any idea what a racial covenant is, but I just want to let you know and show you this is a real thing. This is a real thing that still exists. Just watched here in San Diego a News 10 story about 3 weeks ago where people are still trying to remove racial covenants from their deeds. So this is a real thing. It's still happening right now, right here in the United States, here in San Diego. What does that have to do with theater? How does this apply to anything that we do here in the arts? How does this apply to the canon of literature and plays that have come about? And why should any theater company think about even breaching these ideas, putting stuff on stage that explores these ideas, workshops, anything such as that? Well, I'll tell you. And let me get to my right slide because I have my slides out of order because I thought I was prepared, but it's Monday. So all of you, please just bear with me. To really get into this story, we need to explore another Lee. And that other Lee is Lorraine Hansberry's father. That's right, Lorraine Hansberry's father. This is where this story takes us, and it takes us to a Supreme Court ruling, 1940, Hansberry versus Lee. Lorraine Hansberry's father was he was a businessman. He was a businessman. He owned property. His dad was a slave. Lorraine Hansberry's dad was very hands-on and was very instrumental in making sure that other Blacks in the neighborhood had places to stay. He himself rented out very many apartments and brownstones and duplexes, which kind of caused the issue itself, because as you're this one person in this neighborhood and you're doing most of the renting, people start even looking at you as if, just looking at your practices because you're renting out so many properties yourself in the neighborhood. But he was doing this to make sure that Black people had a place to stay. He decided he wanted to move the family when Lorraine was 8 outside of their Black neighborhood into a white neighborhood. And this is where we start getting into, here's where we start getting into what it is about race covenants and why they were so important and why they still are important to this day. So Mr. Hansberry decided he's going to move his family into a neighborhood. This neighborhood had a race covenant set up. He bought the house. Someone let him buy the house. The neighborhood had this race covenant set up to where they knew nobody Black was supposed to move into the neighborhood. And I'll just read you this. This is actually coming from a spectacular website called the African American Registry. November 13th is the date. On this date in 1940, the Supreme Court ruled in Hansberry versus Lee, which rules that whites cannot bar Blacks from moving into neighborhoods. Now, 3 years earlier, Carl A. Hansberry, who is Lorraine Hansberry's father, a Black businessman, defied Chicago Woodlawn Property Owners Association by successfully negotiating for the purchase of a building at 6140 Rhodes Avenue. At about the same time, Harry H. Pace, a prominent Black attorney and president of the Supreme Liberty Life Insurance Company, purchased a building just east of South Park Way on 16th Street. Anna M. Lee, a white signatory of the restrictive covenant, filed suit against Hansberry and Pace for $100,000. When the circuit court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs for equity, the defendants carried their fight to the Supreme Court of Illinois, which also upheld the legality of the restrictive covenant by a vote of 6-1 and ordered the confiscation of Hansberry's property. Let's look at that for a minute, because as we're dealing with what we're dealing with now over the last year with COVID and dealing with the racial reckoning and so many people coming to understand how many laws and how many things were set up in the United States to keep Black, Brown, Jewish, Irish, depending on the dispossession of time, to keep people in their place, for lack of a better term. Understand, this is a system that was set up in neighborhoods, cities, parishes, with the approval of those city, parish, whatever you want to call it, councils, with the approval of circuit court judges and Supreme Court judges on every level, from the neighborhood to the city to the state, all the way to Supreme Court. That is a system of racism upheld by institutions. And so your argument of there's no such thing as systemic or institutional racism, you can throw them out the window if you're reading a history book. That's just the real deal. Now, the Supreme Court reversed the decision on November 13th in 1940, but I need you to really pay attention to how deep this goes. But did not hold that restrictive covenants were void. It ruled for Hansberry on a legal technicality that an agreement between two property owners, respective of the number of signatories to the restrictive covenant agreement, is fraudulent. Basically, the reason why that Carl Hansberry and the other gentleman won this case is simply because Mrs. Lee, who sued them and who was representative of the neighborhood organization, they lied about how many people they signed the paper. It's not that the judge, it was not out of any moral or human decision that this case was overturned. It was simply overturned because the judge basically said, y'all didn't get enough white folks to sign the paper. So that's the thing. Yeah, they won, but did they? Race, like I said, race covenants still exist to this day. Again, what does that matter? Because that is the inspiration for us receiving, again, one of the most spectacular pieces of literature, plays, narrative, whatever you want to call it, in American history. This is Lorraine Hansberry at 8, 9, 10 years old, watching what her father is doing, being an upstanding businessman, an entrepreneur, at a time when all the cards are stacked against him, and try to branch out, not just stay in the Black neighborhood, but branch out, buy some housing somewhere else. And she watches this play out. She watches this play out as a child. She watches her dad go to the Supreme Court and get this victory. But again, this victory, it's a victory, but is it? It's a little bit hollow, right? Because again, it's not done. The victory is not anything on any moralistic level. It's strictly on the fact that, like, hey, you didn't get enough white people to sign the paper. If y'all had like 30 more people, we'd have ruled in your favor. Again, what does that have to do with a theater being a social justice organization? I think because we use social justice and we use it in the terms and the paradigm that it's been given to us to use today. I don't think we understand that social justice shouldn't just be used as a term. It should be what we live, right? If art imitates life, then we all live these narratives and we're all living around each other and we're striving to teach our kids to live the right way, then social justice should just be the way we live, right? We're looking out for each other. We're making sure that we all have equal footing. We're trying to learn each other, something about each other every day. We're looking at our brothers and sisters next to us in bad situations, and we may see how those situations are caused. If there's something we can do, we lend a hand. If we see that they need a voice, we give that voice. If we see there's a story that's not being told, we need to tell that story. like a great quote that I heard this last year. You know what? You don't have to, in order to amplify voices, you don't have to be a voice for somebody else. You can, but you don't have to be. But you can also simply pass the microphone to them and let them speak for themselves, right? And so that's where we get to where we come out of this place where we were last year, and now we're looking at social justice, getting theater back going. What are the stories we're telling? Everybody wants their story to be told the right way, right? We don't want to just hear what the quote unquote story of the day is about Black people. We don't want just the story of the day or what the prescribed story is about Latinos, right? We don't want just the typical Irish story. We don't just want the story that's been fed about us to the masses for so long, because that's what's keeping us from understanding each other, right? That's what's keeping us from understanding what our differences are. With the race covenant, that is how are people going to overcome racism when you set up a system to keep people segregated, when you set up a system to make sure that people do not buy houses, that they do not lift themselves up, that they do not invest, that they do not become important parts of the economy. And so this is where I believe our modern day role of where we are in storytelling takes place. Not only that we're telling diverse stories, but that we're telling stories that maybe we haven't had. We're telling stories that we haven't heard about our neighbor. We're seeing the things and we're hearing the things, the stories that have been kept from us because people in our past have kept the stories. And I'll give you an example that is on this level. So many narratives and so many stories about Black people, which is what We Are Listening is about. It's about opening that narrative. It's about opening that can up and letting you look inside and see these are your brothers and sisters in the performing arts that you had no idea were working next to you or working along for the common cause, or we're doing these things. And, we've seen a lot of plays throughout history about home ownership, right? And like you look at Mud Row by Dominique Morisseau, right? And there was in discussing this play, there was a well-intentioned thought, a well-intentioned question that came up that was like, oh, great, but do people want to see another play about who gets the house? And my response to that was this. It was like, yeah, there may have been a lot of plays about who gets the house, but today in Black America, there's a real reckoning going on with people discovering the houses that their folks own, that they didn't know they owned, or that house that's been in the family for now hundreds of years that they didn't know. But the venture capitalists and the giant companies, or the companies that are venture capitalist companies parading as real estate companies, are coming into neighborhoods and buying those houses up and running up the price of the neighborhood and offering people who've never had that type of money so much money to get up off that house so that they can up the property values in that neighborhood and price the existing people out. Now, this has become beyond a Black issue. This is, I can't afford, a class issue. We see this all across the country with gentrification, with companies buying up property at a price that you can't afford and offering you something that you think you'll never see again. But what is that doing to our neighborhoods? What is that doing to people of so many different class structures that cannot afford to live in their neighborhood? And now we're seeing a whole generation of people who would be homeowners becoming renters, and people that we become renters experiencing housing insecurity or having to move to neighborhoods that they don't particularly want to move into. And so all those are set up by these past covenants and things like this to get carried forward and get looked a different way. And the question about, that I said was that you've never heard a story about who gets the house in this way, in this contemporary time, in this reckoning among this group of people, which is why it's important to us to have diverse stories, not just the stories that are diverse with people, but the diversity of the stories within these people. If it wasn't for that struggle, if it wasn't for Lorraine Hansberry's dad doing his own form of social justice in deed and in living, then we don't come up with something like this. We don't come up with The Raisin in the Sun. We don't have this spectacular piece of literature. We don't have this spectacular story for us to understand that still goes strong. Look at everybody in this picture. There's Ruby Dee, there's Glenn Thurman, Sidney Poitier. This was the film version of the play that ran in 1959. So if we don't have that, if we don't have these stories, if we don't have people like Lorraine Hansberry, who saw what she saw as a child and then did what? Then dived head first into the civil rights movement. And like I said, that's my real entry point for Lorraine Hansberry, is in the, in the social justice movement, in the civil rights movement. Again, that's my entrance point for her. Hearing the stories from James Baldwin about Lorraine Hansberry, and digging in and understanding where she was in this movement, understanding that she was such a fighter, understanding again that she was there with Baldwin, with Evers, with Malcolm X, with all of them, and that's just where I am tonight. I just wanted to share that moment. And for those who had those questions, or those who thought about that question, or those who think like, is theater going too far right now? Are we telling too many stories? No, we're not telling enough stories. And we've heard all the old stories. And we have a whole generation of people coming up now that have new stories and a new paradigm and new situations and new identities. And there are new problems arising. And we need to hear those stories. We need to be brave enough and bold enough to step out. And if we want to tell those stories, we need to be brave enough and bold enough to get out the way and let people tell them, who know the intricacies of them, who know what these characters are living, breathing, thinking, smelling. We have to get out of the way and let them tell these stories. I think that's just what we have to do. Also, Lorraine Hansberry, the Lorraine Hansberry Theater in the Bay, I think it's maybe 2 episodes back. So it's probably episode 30. It's either episode 31 or 32. Margot Hall, spectacular woman, actress, director. She's directing one of the plays in our Hear Us Now festival coming up this week. She's also the artistic director of the Lorraine Hansberry Theater. I really want you to go watch that episode where me and Jacole talk to Margot, and she talks about what it means to be at the head of this theater named after one of the American greats. And so that's it. That's all. Nothing too long. I'm not going to keep you too much tonight. It's a Monday night. Again, I don't want to keep you too long. That was just a question that had been posed. Should a theater company or performing arts company be a social justice organization, or can it even be? My answer is unequivocally yes. It can be. It should be. If we're telling stories, if we're telling narratives, then we should be inclusive in those narratives. We should make sure that we are stepping out of the way. Even if we want the story told, let's step out the way if we don't know how to tell the story, and give people the tools to tell the story. Let's live up to our mission statements. Let's think about our neighbors. Let's think about everybody who comes through our doors, whether they're actors, whether they're patrons, whether they're donors, whether they're board members. Let's all think about each other as we get ready to step into this new paradigm. I call it a new paradigm as we get ready to step into this new paradigm of American theater. I think it's very important. The doors are opening back up. They've been open in some places. There's still a lot of work to do. So that's it. That's the deal. That's all I got tonight. I told you I wasn't going to keep you that long. Make sure you check out We Are Listening. As soon as this wraps, you can watch this again or tell someone else to watch it if they want to hear me run my mouth for a little bit. You can watch it on San Diego Repertory Theater's YouTube channel. You can also watch it on San Diego Repertory Theater's Facebook page, as well as the Old Globe and La Jolla Playhouse's YouTube pages. And don't forget to head on over to We Are Listening on Spotify. That is all of these spectacular conversations in podcast form. We do have great episodes coming up for you. I don't want to say anything until I get the yes and the emails are sent and the final dates are set. But coming up towards the end of this month and coming up in December, we have some spectacular guests coming up for you as we get into the new year. Michael Gene Sullivan, who was actually the writer of The Great Con, which the Rep is producing in March. He will be one of our guests here. So again, come back and join us. Spread the word. This is We Are Listening, where we celebrate the lives and experiences of people who identify Black theater creatives, artists, workers, administrators, electricians, designers, you name it. We're here. We're not the other. We're the standard. We've been here, and we're gonna be here. Again, on behalf of La Jolla Playhouse, Director of Arts Engagement and In-House Casting, Jacole Kitchen, and on behalf of my man, Mr. Freedom Bradley Valentine, Old Globe Associate Artistic Director and Director of Arts Engagement. My name is Ahmed Dents, Director of Venue Experience and Artistic Associate here at San Diego Repertory Theatre. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. And as always, thank you for listening. And I'll talk to you soon. I'll see you here at the Rep.